Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. The numbers are out for RFK Jr.'s donors, and boy, do we have quite the collection of billionaire ghouls, racists, social Darwinists, and even election deniers who tried to help Trump overthrow the election results. Shall we call this the new Camelot? Let's start with the biggest donor to RFK so far. He is a heiress to a Gilded Age banking and aviation family. RFK Jr. Super PAC is mostly funded by GOP megadonor who spent millions on Trump and bankrolled an effort to build a border wall in Texas. Major Super PAC backing RFK Jr.'s campaign, mostly funded by Timothy Mellon. Mellon has given millions to GOP campaigns, including Trump, and bankrolled a border wall effort in Texas. It wasn't clear, or if it wasn't clear already, longshot presidential candidate RFK Jr. has some Republican fans, including some who are willing to spend millions backing his campaign. According to documents filed with the FEC, the majority of the $9.8 million raised by American Values 2024, the Super PAC backing Kennedy's campaign, came from Timothy Mellon, who gave $5 million to the group in April, days before Kennedy officially launched in his campaign. Mellon cited Kennedy's, quote, bipartisan support in a statement. Quote, he's the one candidate who could unite the country and root out corruption. He's the one Democrat who could win in the general election. Stay tuned, because obviously Timothy Mellon, the billionaire who was handed a fortune, really cares about corruption. We'll get into that. In addition to Kennedy, Mellon has given handsomely to Republican candidates and campaigns in recent years, gave $20 million to America First Action, Super PAC supporting Donald Trump's 2020 reelection, $45 million to Congressional Leadership Fund, a Super PAC associated with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and $30 million to Turkey Neck himself, Mitch McConnell. He also donated $53 million to an effort led by Texas Governor Greg Abbott to build the wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, effectively funding it himself. He's the grandson of famous banking magnate Andrew Mellon and an heir to the family fortune. I want to show you, this is from ProPublica. Of course, the sins of the grandfather and father can't completely associate with, their child or grandson, but I don't think the apple falls far from the tree here. This is from ProPublica. The starring villain in Roosevelt, FDR's crackdown on aggressive tax avoidance was the Mellon family, which controlled banks, aluminum production, and oil interests. Thomas Mellon had immigrated from what is now Northern Ireland, where he complained in his autobiography, quote, oppressive taxes drove our people from their homes. In the early 1820s, Thomas, then a child, visited Pittsburgh. He gaped at the power of a steam-driven grist mill and at the opulence of the mill owner's home, a stately brick mansion. This was the Negley estate, owned by one of the most prominent landholders in Pittsburgh. Mellon would live on that very property. Years later, after a calculated courtship, he married Sarah J. Negley, who inherited a share of her father's properties. As Pittsburgh boomed, Mellon became successful in his own right, building a law career, investing in real estate, becoming a judge, and then an immensely wealthy banker. With success came fear, a nagging sense that his riches could be snatched away by the tax man, according to a biography. This is my favorite part here. Steeped in social Darwinism, Mellon viewed the acquisition of wealth as a mark of merit and poverty as a failure of character. Ugh. And Ayn Rand must have gone to bed reading him. Mellon wrote in his autobiography that voting rights were responsible for many of society's ills, driving higher spending, borrowing, and taxes. Not far below the surface of these fears was racism. After the Civil War, Mellon toured the South, where he wrote that he was disgusted to see Louisiana's legislature captured by what he called, quote, stolid, stupid, rude, and awkward field Negroes, lolling on the seats or crunching peanuts. These representatives, he declared, were puppets of white Northerners who were using, quote, corrupt schemes to rob the property owners and taxpayers. Well, Jordan, you can't blame the grandson or great-grandson for his great-grandfather or grandfather's social Darwinism and racism. Well, I don't really think the apple fell far from the tree, judging by Timothy Mellon, and his modern day activities. First, let's show you your average, Tuesday tax avoidance. Aviation and marketing billionaire Timothy Mellon, who reported a $1.9 billion windfall from the tax cut legislation, has anteed up $24 million. A considerable sum of these donations go to the Super PAC Congressional Leadership Fund associated with House Speaker Paul Ryan. Donald Trump, whose personal business continues to thrive during his days in office, is reported to have benefited to the tune of $11 million. Now, that $1.9 billion windfall from the tax cut legislation is referring to Trump's tax cuts in 2017. So you have Timothy Mellon here, who donated $5 million to RFK Jr., saved about $1.9 billion from Trump's tax cut schemes, gave about $20 million to Trump's reelection effort, and has given $30 million to Mitch McConnell, $20 million to Kevin McCarthy, and yet is donating to RFK Jr., citing his, quote, bipartisan credentials. By the way, we reached out to RFK Jr. about these donations. Haven't heard back yet. So let's also take a look at Timothy Mellon's views on African Americans. Sounds kind of similar to his elders in his family. Timothy Mellon, the 77-year-old founder of Rail and Freight Company, who poured $30 million into 3 GOP super PACs in 5 months, wrote that Black people were, quote, even more belligerent after the expansion of social programs in the 1960s and 1970s, and that Americans who rely on government assistance were, quote, slaves of a new master, Uncle Sam. In a self-published 2015 autobiography, Mellon called a social safety net program, quote, a slavery redux, adding, for delivering their votes in the federal elections, they are rewarded with yet more and more freebies, food stamps, cell phones, WIC payments, Obamacare, and on and on and on. The largesse is funded by the hardworking folks, fewer and fewer in number, who are too honest or too proud to allow themselves to sink into the morass. Mellon declined to comment. I'm sure he did. So, I don't know. I'm sure if RFK Jr.'s campaign responds, I reached out to him on Timothy Mellon's donations to Republicans like Trump, Timothy Mellon's previous racist statements. Not holding my breath that I'll get a response. I simply asked, do you accept this support? I'm sure they'll say we don't control who donates to the super PAC and yada, yada. We have nothing to do with it. Obviously, that's BS. But these rich people, these, heirs and heiresses to gilded fortunes in the banking industry, they don't generally give money without knowing who the candidate is that they're contributing to, without knowing what they are going to do and what they're not going to do. I'm pretty sure Mr. Timothy here, I'm pretty sure he likes RFK Jr.'s talk of, I'm a champion of a free market. Pretty sure he knows when RFK talks about, the working class and the middle class, he knows it's just your average cardboard cutout, Obama-esque rhetoric that's not going to come with any actual policy. It's just, the marketing you need to get in there before we maintain the status quo for people like me, Timothy Mellon. But Timothy Mellon was not the only corporate ghoul and sociopath to donate to RFK Jr. $4.5 million. $4.5 million was provided by Gavin DeBecker. He is a pretty popular security consultant, provides security to celebrities and corporate ghouls, including Jeff Bezos. He gave $4.5 million to RFK Jr. Can't really tell you why, but that's a big chunk of change to give to RFK Jr. And he seemed to be very incensed that RFK Jr. was attacked over his deplorable, disgusting, conspiratorial comments about basically COVID being manufactured as a bioweapon, but manufactured to avoid the Jews. Remember that a couple weeks ago? RFK Jr. tweeted this out in response, defending himself against his own words that were reported in the New York Post. How targeted propaganda works. Gavin DeBecker, best-selling author of The Gift of Fear, just made this insightful comment on the New York Post controversy. It's worth sharing. Quote, targeted propaganda attacks work because they grab us emotionally. I am Jewish too, bar mitzvahed. Grandfather escaped from Poland. So the whole topic is radioactive. And from that point of view, the New York Post article is masterful. It grabs us, gets us emotionally invested, and sets people researching for adjacent material by bad people to link to the topic RFK Jr. raised. So what he seems to be defending there is the avalanche of criticism that came in response to not an article, but RFK Jr.'s own words that were released by the New York Post. He was at a dinner in New York City with journalists, I believe donors, where on his own, he brought up that he thought COVID-19 was basically a bioweapon. It was made to disproportionately target Caucasians and Black people, and Jews or Ashkenazi Jews and the Chinese were somehow the most immune. If you didn't see that, take a look.
And we need to talk about bioweapons. I know a lot now about bioweapons because I've been doing a book on it for the past 2.5 years, and you know, the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure of genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and Black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. But we don't know whether it was deliberately targeted that or not. But there are papers out there that show the racial and ethnic differential impact to that. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. That's what all those labs in the Ukraine are about. They're collecting Russian DNA, they're collecting Chinese DNA, so that we can target people by race.
So RFK Jr. propping up De Becker, defending RFK Jr., saying, as always, his go-to, they're taking me out of context. I don't know. The video seems very clear what he was saying. He's pushing yet another conspiracy theory about COVID. It's a bioweapon. It's meant to target whites and Blacks and avoid, go around the Jews or the Chinese. I guess that kind of thing is attractive enough. 4.5 million from De Becker. But not to be outdone, also he had another big supporter, RFK Jr., and that would be from Patrick Byrne. Other top Kennedy supporters included Patrick Byrne, the former chief executive of Overstock.com. If you don't know about Patrick Byrne, he's also been very busy being an election denier and trying to help Donald Trump overturn the 2020 election results. With a career-ending affair with a Russian agent, attacks on a professional nemesis he named the Sith Lord, and constant references to the deep state, Patrick Byrne often pushed conspiracy theories and found himself ensnared in a controversy long before the former chief executive of online retailer Overstock promoted Donald Trump's baseless claims of a rigged election. Byrne, one of corporate America's most vocal proponents of the former president's falsehoods about the 2020 election, will be the latest figure from Trump's orbit to meet with the House committee investigating January 6th attack on the Capitol. The longtime cryptocurrency advocate is scheduled to meet privately with the committee on Friday. Byrne's involvement in efforts to overturn the election were revealed Tuesday during the committee's hearing. The former furniture industry executive joined lawyers Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, as well as former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, in the Oval Office on December 18, 2020, days after the Electoral College certified that Joe Biden had won the election. While many of Trump's legal advisors had accepted that he had lost the election, Byrne and others were pushing an idea that the president could use the National Guard to seize voting machines. Byrne's Oval Office access appeared to agitate those staffers, hoping to redirect Trump's attention away from conspiracy theories. Quote, first of all, the Overstock person, I didn't even know who this guy was. Former White House counsel Pat Cipollone said in a videotaped interview aired Tuesday during the meeting. I looked at him and I said, "Who are you?" Cipollone said. Well, here's who he is. He donated $2 million to conduct the, quote, Arizona election audit. Former Overstock CEO Patrick Byrne has personally donated $2 million to the presidential election audit in Arizona's Maricopa County. A group set up by Byrne contributed a total of $3.2 million to the ballot review. As a nonprofit, the group is subject to limited financial reporting requirements and does not have to disclose all of its donors. Byrne said he does not plan to disclose information on the donors because most were small dollar contributors. Hey, I hate to burst your bubble. I know some of our viewers love RFK, and you'll probably, put your head on the table, head in the sand, and say, well, we love RFK on vaccines and all the other loony conspiracy theories like 5G giving you cancer or estrogene turning men into women. But at the end of the day, I believe in all cases, Democrats, Republicans, follow the money. It's the money, Lebowski. I don't want to hear RFK Jr. talking about the working class, the fallen, decimated middle class, talking about all that he's going to do, talking about Joe Biden's corruption, even though he's right, when he is literally taking money from some of the most disgusting, vile, racist, social Darwinistic corporate gas bags in the United Corporations of America. You are who you associate with. I also don't want to hear, oh, it's a super PAC. He doesn't control that. Why the hell do you think these people are donating to him? You think they think that he's actually going to change anything economically tilted towards the working class? You think they think he's going to raise their taxes? You think they think he's going to enhance regulations? You think they think he's going to give Americans health care? You think they think he's going to do a damn thing? What's needed, the bold, seismic action needed to avoid a climate apocalypse? No, they don't. Now, you could say, well, Jordan, Biden's terrible, so isn't this better? Well, isn't that the lesser of two evils a lot of folks have kept telling us we cannot subscribe to anymore? I don't want Biden, and I don't want RFK Jr., and I don't want any candidate that takes money or associates with people who donate $53 million to build a wall on the southern border. I don't want a candidate who's taking money from people who are propping up. I don't want a candidate saying this thing about COVID and Jews and the Chinese. I don't want someone taking money from election deniers who tried to help Trump overthrow the election. I think the jig is up. And if you're still defending RFK Jr. and you still have your head in the sand, ignoring all of this, all of the monies he's taking, all of the people he's associating with, not to mention, he doesn't have any specifics on what he'll do for you. He's openly said, yeah, no, not doing Medicare for all. Yeah, no, public option, not a thing. I haven't heard him talk about free public college. I haven't heard him talk about a dollar amount in cutting the military. I've heard him say, I'm a free market champion. Follow the money. It's that simple.